Imagine waking up and realizing you're the last person on Earth. The silence after humanity. Imagine for a moment that you wake up in an empty world. You stretch, open your eyes, and everything around you is still. The bustling noises of the morning, traffic, footsteps, the chatter of people are absent. Instead, a heavy silence surrounds you. No alarms, no phones ringing, no voices calling out. Just the sound of your breath filling the air. You stand up slowly, looking around. The world is strangely still, frozen in time. The once busy streets are now deserted, with no cars or bikes rushing by. The usual hustle and bustle of life gone. The shops are empty, windows cracked, dust settling where once there was activity. As you step outside, you hear only the soft creak of old trees swaying with the wind, the rustle of dry leaves brushing against the pavement. Nature is here, alive and breathing, but humanity has disappeared. There's an odd beauty to this silence, a feeling of something profound that was always hidden beneath the noise of daily life. The birds still sing, but their songs are slower, more distant, like whispers in an endless void. The city before you is not abandoned, it is forgotten. The streets are overgrown with vines and wildflowers, like nature has gently crept in to take over. The once shiny cars that lined the streets are now covered in moss and dust. There are no signs of life, no signs of struggle. Only the quiet decay of time moving forward without people. And yet, it feels like the world is still waiting for something, for someone. The buildings are silent, yet they seem to speak in their own way. The cracked windows reflect only your face as you pass by. You stop for a moment, staring at the reflection, wondering if anyone will ever look through those windows again. Will anyone ever see this city again? The empty streets stretch before you, endless and wide. The silence feels overwhelming at first, like a heavy blanket smothering you. There's no chatter to break the tension, no sounds of footsteps to reassure you. Everything is at a standstill, but after a while, you begin to notice something curious. The quiet becomes soothing, like the world is giving you space to breathe, to think, to be. Without the noise of human activity, you feel lighter. You hear the faint rustling of leaves, the far-off call of a bird, the faint hum of the wind. Everything that once was drowned out now feels so present. It quotes not the absence of sound that you feel. It's the presence of everything else. The world still exists. It's just different now. You walk through the streets, your footsteps echoing in the emptiness. At first, you think you might be imagining the depth of the silence. It feels unreal. Yet, with each step, you realize just how real it is. There's something profound in this moment. A question begins to rise, unbidden in your mind. What did the noise really mean? Was it necessary? The chatter, the endless movement, the bustling pace of society, was that the essence of life? Or did it obscure something deeper, something more meaningful that can only be heard in the quiet? You reach a bench in the park, now overtaken by creeping ivy and wildflowers. It's almost as if the park itself is breathing, living, without the need for anyone to care for it. You sit down, running your fingers through the grass. The smell of earth fills the air. The world is at peace, but you are left alone to feel it. Without the distractions of humanity, there is space to think, to reflect. The silence is no longer something you fear. It's a canvas for your thoughts. The wind blows softly through the trees, and for the first time in a long time, you feel the weight of your own presence. You are, in this moment, the only thing that remains. The world, in its silence, has given you a strange gift, the gift of being present, without the endless demands of the world around you. The longer you sit there, the more you realize something. This is the world as it was meant to be. It is simple, raw, and true. Without the chaos, without the rush, the world is just here. The trees, the grass, the sky, they remain. They existed before humanity, and they will exist long after. The silence is not empty, it's full of life. And then, a deeper thought begins to settle in. If this is what the world would look like without us, what does it mean for us now? What are we leaving behind? What have we built? And what will remain once the noise fades away? The world, once filled with endless noise, now stands still. The question remains, what happens when there is no one to hear the silence? Is it still worth something? Or has it become a forgotten part of the world? Why civilizations collapse? Imagine walking through the remnants of a great city, where towering columns stand in eerie silence, and the wind whispers through the ruins of what was once a bustling hub of culture and power. Around you, the streets are empty, the echoes of the past lingering in the air. The cities of the Maya, the Egyptians, and the Romans, societies that reached remarkable heights, are now silent, their legacies fading. But why do these civilizations fall? At the height of their powers, these societies seemed invincible. Yet, time and time again, history shows us that even the mightiest civilizations can crumble. What causes a civilization to collapse, especially when it appears to be flourishing? One major factor is complacency. Civilizations, when at their peak, often believe their greatness will last forever. The Romans were masters of engineering and law, the Maya excelled in astronomy, and the Egyptians had an empire that spanned centuries. They all thought their reigns would never end. Yet they failed to recognize the slow, creeping challenges that would eventually bring them to their knees. Take the Maya, for example. They built magnificent cities, developed sophisticated writing systems, and created incredible advancements in science. However, their downfall came from something more subtle: their overuse of natural resources. Their cities were perched on fragile ecosystems, and over time, they deforested their environment and depleted the soil. This environmental damage led to crop failures and, eventually, societal collapse. The Maya had the knowledge to thrive, but ignored the signs that their environment could not sustain their growth forever. Similarly, the Roman Empire, one of the most powerful civilizations in history, fell not just due to external threats, but due to internal weaknesses. The Romans stretched their empire across vast territories, which led to military overextension. The economy faltered under the weight of inflation, and the once disciplined Roman military became stretched thin and ineffective. Corruption among the ruling elite and a lack of unity further eroded the foundations of the empire. And then there's the Egyptian civilization. For millennia, Egypt thrived along the Nile, but even their mighty pyramids couldn't protect them from internal strife and external invasions. Over time, Egypt faced a series of foreign invasions, from the Persians to the Greeks, and eventually the Romans. But it wasn't just foreign enemies that contributed to their fall. Internal corruption and the inability to adapt to new political realities played a significant role. What can we learn from these ancient civilizations? They all shared a common flaw: a failure to adapt and evolve when faced with internal pressures and external challenges. The Maya, the Romans, the Egyptians, they all believed their systems were unshakable. Yet they crumbled when the pressures became too great. So, we must ask, could our civilization follow the same trajectory? We live in a time of incredible technological advances, but also at a time when our environment is being stretched to its limits. Climate change, political instability, and resource depletion are all factors that put immense pressure on our global systems. We live in a hyper-connected world, but that also means we're vulnerable to rapid and widespread change. The story of past civilizations shows us that greatness can be fragile. A civilization's decline isn't always the result of an obvious downfall, like an invasion or war. Often, it's the result of unnoticed internal weaknesses, social, political, and environmental issues that gradually build up until they become insurmountable. Now, take a moment to reflect on the world around you. Could the same fate befall our society? Are we overlooking warning signs that could lead to collapse? The Maya, the Romans, the Egyptians. What did they miss that we might be missing today? If you found yourself pondering these questions, take a moment to like this video. Let's dive deeper into the possible future of our civilization, because understanding the past might be the key to shaping a more sustainable future. Theories of humanity's end. Humanity has long been haunted by the thought of its own extinction. As we advance, so do the dangers threatening our existence. One prominent theory points to technological collapse. With artificial intelligence continuing to evolve at an extraordinary rate, there is the very real possibility that machines may one day surpass human intelligence. This could lead to AI developing capabilities beyond human control, and possibly viewing us as obsolete or even as a threat. Climate change presents another looming threat. With rising temperatures, extreme weather events, and disappearing ecosystems, the planet is undergoing transformations that could make large parts of Earth uninhabitable. Climate models predict that by the end of this century, many coastal cities will be underwater, and entire ecosystems will be destroyed. Left unchecked, this crisis may lead to mass migrations and possibly the collapse of entire societies, rendering much of the planet inhospitable for human life. Pandemics have also become a pressing concern. While the COVID-19 pandemic illustrated how vulnerable our global health system is, the next outbreak could be even more severe. With advancements in biotechnology, there's the potential for the creation of new, highly contagious viruses that could easily spread across the globe. The very nature of viruses, their ability to mutate, and their capacity for mass transmission make them a unique existential threat. Should the world face a global pandemic worse than any before, it could have devastating consequences for humanity. Nuclear war remains another dark shadow hanging over us. The threat of a full-scale nuclear conflict, with its devastating effects on both the environment and human life, is an ever-present concern. Nuclear weapons are capable of destroying entire cities in a matter of moments, but the fallout would last for years, poisoning the atmosphere, water, and food supplies. The radiation from such a war would likely cause widespread destruction, long-lasting ecological damage, and possibly even the end of human civilization as we know it. The potential for global annihilation through nuclear warfare is always a sobering reality. Then there's the more gradual end to humanity, a slow disintegration of societal structures. As technology progresses at an increasingly rapid pace, humanity might find itself unable to keep up. With the rise of automation, AI, and biotechnology, many jobs could disappear, leaving millions of people without purpose or direction. As we become increasingly disconnected from the very systems we've created, we risk losing our relevance as a species. In this scenario, civilization could collapse not through a single catastrophic event, but as the slow erosion of social structures, economies, and human connection over time. Cosmic events like asteroid impacts or supernova also pose a risk, though these events are exceedingly rare. Throughout Earth's history, large impacts have triggered mass extinctions, and while it's unlikely that we'll face such an event in the near future, the possibility is real. A collision with an asteroid large enough to cause widespread destruction would create enormous fires, earthquakes, and tsunamis. It could also lead to climate shifts, such as a nuclear winter scenario, where the Earth's atmosphere would be filled with dust, blocking sunlight and drastically lowering temperatures. The result would be an ecological collapse, killing off many species, including humans. The end of humanity could also come in a more subtle way, through the gradual fade of human influence on the planet. As we move toward greater reliance on machines, virtual spaces, and artificial environments, we may lose the ability to control the systems we have created. Social disintegration, coupled with the collapse of vital industries and structures, could lead to the collapse of entire civilizations without a singular catastrophic event. This would be the slow, quiet death of humanity, where societies fade into oblivion, and the natural world reclaims its place, in the distant future, after the last human has passed away. What would be left behind? There would be remnants of our civilization, buildings left abandoned, streets overrun by nature, and technology that no longer functions. Perhaps future explorers, long after our time, will find fragments of what once was. Yet, without humans to remember, what would our existence truly have meant? The legacy we leave behind would be no more than a shadow of what we once were. The mind in absolute isolation. Imagine waking up in a world where silence is your only companion. At first, isolation may feel like a peaceful escape. No distractions, no demands. It seems like the perfect opportunity to rest, reflect, or simply exist. But as days turn into weeks, the weight of solitude begins to press down on you. The absence of human connection becomes deafening. The mind, starved for interaction, begins to create its own reality. At first, it's subtle whispers in the wind, fleeting shadows in the corner of your eye. But soon, your mind starts to play tricks on you. Sounds that aren't there, visions that don't exist, a constant reminder that you're alone. Over time, your sense of self begins to slip away. Without the presence of others to reflect who you are, your identity starts to fade into the void. Every thought becomes magnified, every memory more distant, and every question about your existence feels more urgent. You begin to wonder, who are you when no one else is around to confirm your worth? Is your identity merely a reflection of others, or can it exist independently? Your perception of time starts to warp. The hours blend together, as if the very concept of time becomes meaningless. What was once clear now feels like an illusion. Days are indistinguishable from one another, and you lose track of how long you've been isolated. The world outside feels like a distant memory, fading the longer you remain alone. The psychological toll grows as your mind, left to its own devices, begins to fracture. But in the silence, there is also a strange peace. The lack of external noise creates space for introspection. Without the clutter of other voices, you may begin to hear your own thoughts more clearly than ever before. This solitude, this absence of distraction, might provide the opportunity to reconnect with the deepest parts of yourself. But the same mind that seeks peace can also become an enemy. The longer you retreat inward, the more vulnerable you become to the distortions of thought isolation breeds. As the isolation deepens, the boundaries of reality begin to blur. What is real? What is imagined? The mind, pushing further into its own world, starts to distort these lines. You may hear voices or see faces, unreal yet vividly present. The fear of losing touch with reality can become paralyzing, but it's also part of the experience. The longer you're alone, the more fragile your grasp on reality becomes. Can you trust your mind when you're the only one left to make sense of it? Yet, even in these depths of isolation, there are moments of clarity. Without the distractions of society, you may find an opportunity to truly understand yourself, to confront parts of your soul that might have been buried under the noise of daily life. But these realizations come at a cost. The more you reflect, the more you face the emptiness of your situation. And in facing that emptiness, you must confront the question: can a person truly remain whole when isolated from everything they once knew? In this quiet, you are forced to confront the raw, unfiltered truth about yourself. The longer you are alone, the more your mind will question its own existence. Can you survive without losing yourself in the process? How much of your identity is shaped by others, and how much of it can you maintain when the world fades away? These are the questions that linger in the empty silence, urging you to find a way to survive, or perhaps to simply accept the inevitable transformation of your mind in the face of unbroken isolation. How long could you maintain your sense of self in complete solitude? What part of your identity would you lose if you were the only one left? Take a moment to think about it. Would you survive isolation without losing your grip on reality? If you're still here, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think? Could you truly survive isolation without losing yourself? If no one remembers you, did you ever exist? Imagine waking up in a world where no one remembers your name, where your actions, your thoughts, and your very existence fade into the nothingness of time. It's a haunting thought, isn't it? To live a life and realize that once you're gone, no trace of you remains. No legacy, no stories passed down, no memories etched into the minds of others. Does life have meaning if no one is there to remember it? Or is the act of living itself enough to validate existence, even in the absence of memory? When we think about our place in the world, it's often tied to the impact we have on others, the relationships we build, the things we create, the lives we touch. All of these are the markers of a life well lived. But if no one remembers you, can you truly say that you existed at all? We often seek validation through the memories of others, but what happens when those memories are lost to time? This question strikes at the heart of human nature. Our very sense of self is often shaped by how we are perceived. When someone remembers you, you are reflected in their minds, in their thoughts, in their words. That reflection is what gives your life substance. But if there's no one left to remember you, do you fade into oblivion like so many before you? Take a moment to think about it. What would your life be like if no one ever remembered the things you did? Would you still feel that your existence was meaningful? It's easy to dismiss the idea when we are surrounded by others, when our lives are filled with experiences and interactions. But in solitude, in a world where no one recalls your actions, the question becomes painfully real. Memory is fragile. Over time, people forget names, faces, events. Even the most influential figures in history eventually become distant echoes, their names barely remembered by the few who remain. The pyramids stand, but who built them? The great philosophers wrote, but who still recalls their teachings? As time passes, the memories of even the greatest minds fade into the ether. So, if those who are long gone are forgotten, what about you? What happens when you're not a figure of historical significance? This question leads us to the deeper reflection on the meaning of life itself. Is the purpose of our existence solely to be remembered? Or is it more about the experiences we live and the moments we create, whether anyone else is there to witness them or not? When we strip away the need for validation, what is left? The quiet moments, the simple acts of kindness, the thoughts you hold dear. These may not be remembered by the world, but they are the essence of your existence. Without the need for others to remember, you might realize that the value of your life doesn't lie in being immortalized in the minds of others. It lies in the lived experience, in the choices you make, and in the way you find meaning, regardless of who remembers. The truth is, memory isn't a guarantee, and life is fleeting. But even in its fleeting nature, it has value, perhaps more than we realize. Now, take a deep breath and think about your own life. What if, in the end, no one remembered your name? Would you still feel that your life was worthwhile? Would you still feel that it mattered? Let me know your thoughts. Does the idea of being forgotten affect how you live your life? Could civilization ever restart? Imagine waking up in a world where all traces of humanity have vanished. The cities we built, the technology that drives us, the knowledge passed down through generations, everything is gone. It's as if the world has hit the reset button, wiping away centuries of progress. But here's the real question. Could humanity ever rise again from the ashes? It might sound impossible at first. How could we rebuild something as complex as our current civilization when all the foundations have crumbled? Yet, if history has taught us anything, it's that humanity has this incredible ability to rebuild itself, to rise from the ruins and start anew. The key question is, could it happen again? Let's consider the past. Civilizations have collapsed before. The fall of Rome, the decline of the Maya, the disappearance of the Indus Valley civilization. Each time society crumbled, and it seemed like everything was lost. But in the end, humanity persisted. New societies emerged, adapting and evolving in different ways. So, could civilization restart again? If a few survivors were left after the collapse, their first task would be survival, finding food, water, shelter. But once that basic need is met, what then? How would they go about reconstructing something as complex as society? The answer lies in the preservation of knowledge. The books, the technologies, the sciences, they would need to be safeguarded at all costs. Even a single fragment of knowledge could become the seed for rebuilding a society. Imagine the few survivors stumbling upon a piece of ancient technology. A book, a tablet, a computer hard drive that somehow survived the collapse. Would they be able to decipher it? Would they have the knowledge to even understand what it was? The difficulty would be immense. Starting over isn't just about physical survival. It's about understanding the tools and resources at your disposal and learning how to use them again. It's at this point that human ingenuity would play its greatest role. The survivors wouldn't be able to rebuild everything at once, but the curiosity to rebuild would drive them forward. It might start with simple things, a fire, a wheel, the basic principles of agriculture. From there, step by step, they could begin the long road to civilization. It would be a slow process, yes, but not impossible. And what about the collective knowledge humanity has gathered? The writings, the arts, the sciences, would any of it be passed down? It's here that our memories, our stories, and our records would be crucial. Perhaps in this new world, the past would live on only through oral traditions, passed down through generations, like ancient myths and legends. Or maybe a few survivors would be able to preserve some small corner of the digital world, sharing it with others. But how would society itself be rebuilt? Would it look like the world we once knew? Or would it be something entirely different? Would they have the same systems of government, the same values? Or would they invent new ways of living? And if civilization started again, would it make the same mistakes? Or would we build something better this time? Now, take a moment to think about it. How would you begin? What knowledge would you make sure to preserve? What resources would be vital in this new world? If you had to start civilization over from scratch, what would you focus on? Leave a comment below. I'm curious to hear what you think. As we think about the possibility of restarting civilization, it's clear that survival would be just the beginning. Rebuilding, though, would take patience, ingenuity, and a deep understanding of what's truly important. Could humanity do it again? Or would we be left to wonder what could have been? Finding meaning at the end of everything. As the last remnants of humanity fade away, and the cities crumble into ruins, we're left in a silent world, where nothing remains to tell the story of what was. The streets, once bustling with life, now lie empty, overtaken by nature's steady, relentless reclaiming of what was once built. In this barren world, a question lingers. What, if anything, remains at the end of everything? In the absence of people, in a world devoid of human touch and influence, the concept of meaning comes into sharp focus. What does it mean to exist when no one is left to witness or remember? Does purpose exist beyond the framework of society? When there is no one to acknowledge our actions, no one to recognize our struggles, does our life still hold any value? And if it does, where do we find it? In this emptiness, we face the stark realization that meaning isn't necessarily something that can be measured by external standards. Without the crowd, without the voices, the idea of purpose seems far more abstract. The answers we once sought in the approval of others, in society's expectations, are now irrelevant. Without the noise, the distractions, and the demands of the world, we are left with the quiet reality of our existence. Perhaps in this solitude, meaning becomes more personal, more intrinsic. It's no longer about what others think or remember. It's about what we find within ourselves. In a world stripped of validation and recognition, the meaning of our existence can emerge from the simplicity of being. The act of breathing, the feeling of the wind against your skin, the sight of a sunset. These moments, though fleeting, become significant in their very existence. These are the moments that hold meaning, not because they are remembered by others, but because they simply are. In a way, perhaps the absence of others allows us to experience life in its purest form. Without the weight of expectations, we can embrace the present in its fullest. In the silence, we might begin to understand that meaning isn't about creating a lasting legacy or about being remembered. It's about living in the moment, experiencing what is here, and allowing ourselves to find peace in that. Even as the world crumbles, nature persists. The mountains remain unshaken. The rivers continue to flow. In their permanence, they remind us that meaning doesn't have to be tied to human existence. The earth, the sky, the stars, they all carry on, indifferent to our presence, yet offering a quiet kind of purpose. They exist not for us, but with us, and perhaps that is the ultimate form of meaning, to find peace in what is, without the need for it to be any more than it already is. At the end of everything, meaning isn't necessarily something we need to create or pursue. It exists in the quiet acceptance of the world as it is. It lies in the moments we can still find, even when everything else seems lost. The search for meaning, then, becomes not a frantic chase, but a peaceful journey. It's about understanding that, even in the silence of the world's end, there is still beauty, still value, and still a reason to be. As you reflect on this quiet world, where humanity's mark has faded, take a moment to think about your own search for meaning. Where do you find purpose, not in the grand gestures, but in the small, fleeting moments of life? Is it enough to simply exist, to breathe, to feel, to witness? Perhaps at the end of everything, the answer to meaning is found not in what we achieve or leave behind, but in the quiet moments we experience, in the peace we find within ourselves. What meaning do you find in your own life, and how do you connect to the world around you? Perhaps there is a quiet truth waiting to be discovered.